Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the 7th webinar towards COP26 for the Local Government and Municipal Authorities Constituency, organized by ICLEI in its capacity as the focal point. We're delighted to have this session in the next hour with a brief agenda as follows. You can see. Before going through the details of the agenda, I just wanted to highlight that this webinar is recorded so that it is also uploaded on the internet later on to be accessible by other participants. At the beginning of the webinar, all attendees are muted, and we encourage you to type your questions in the question box or raise your hand when you have an issue during the first presentation, which is around 30 minutes, in the next 30 minutes. Once the first presentation is over, we will be open the floor for interactions, for the participation of the participants. You can either verbally share your points. This could be a question, clarification, or additional inputs. We're more than happy to welcome you in that regard. With this, I'd like to go through the agenda for today. That just for those who are new, I also would like to introduce myself. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. I'm also acting as the focal point of Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So today we will be having a recap or recalling our agenda towards COP26. These webinars are held monthly, therefore we are familiar with many of those topics, but time to time we also have newcomers into this session. So we believe it's always helpful to have a very brief overview of the historical evolution and our priorities for this year. Then, as traditionally with our webinars, we will be mainly focusing on our progress since the last month. We will cover the key events that has taken place over the past couple of weeks, and we will spend more time in the highlights of the upcoming events, selected events, let's say, and that will be then open for Q&A session. For those who have been following that over the past months, we have been having monthly webinars. Here you can see the calendar, the webinar presentations and the recordings of each of them. The good news that we have now centralized all these in a YouTube channel of ICLEI, so that with this link you can reach out to the previous webinars much easily. And the links could also take you to the presentation. So when we share with you the PDF version of this presentation, you can have access to all those previous sessions. For those who are involved in the climate negotiations, what we have been highlighting is that over the past 25 years or so, since 1995, the first Conference of Parties, what we have been aiming for is an active engagement of local and regional governments in the whole climate process in the global level. Over this period, we can notice that this was in two main phases. The first 20 years was the place time where we were trying to convince the national governments. This was mainly through our engagement, through our roadmap. We have been participating in the negotiations towards and Paris outcome. This was a result. This was a process after the failure of the Copenhagen process. This was also continuing after the technical sessions opened in the ADP process. We have also been engaging with the Friends of Cities, with the parties who are friendly to the context of local action, and we have been engaged ourselves in the 2014 UN Climate Summit as well. With the adoption of the Paris Agreement, we made a major breakthrough, because the preambular paragraph of the Paris Agreement recognizes the importance of engagement of all levels of government. And there are several paragraphs that refers to us, the special documents that were signed by the heads of state. But in the official decision of the Paris Agreement, in numerous paragraphs, we also have relevant engagement as non-party stakeholders. Therefore, since 2016, our advocacy is shaped a bit more differently. We have been engaged in the Marrakech partnership. We have kicked off cities and regions dialogues. We have elevated our work in the multi-level Friends of Multi-Level Action. we have been participating in the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco, and obviously 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. So these are the opportunities for us to use in terms of how we can solidify what it means to engage all levels of government in the Paris Agreement, and that is where we are in this sense. For those, again, who are familiar with the UNFCCC process or climate negotiations, it's a cyclic process. Every year there is a presidency, which is more or less the country who hosts the event, but over the past couple of years, there were some changes. For example, in the case of 2019, Chile was the political president, but the event was hosted in Madrid because of logistical issues. Every year, the host or the presidency announce a president, and then since Paris Agreement, they also announce a high-level champion, and the country who would host the next round will also define their priorities and their delegations. So, and in between these two big events, which are called COPs, Conference of Parties, there is a session called technical sessions in Bonn. Obviously, throughout this 2020, all of them are postponed to 2021. So, but we will continue to interact with the presidency of COP25, which is the official leadership of the presidency until the next COP in the UK in Glasgow, which will be led by the UK government. And we have the champions from both Chile and the UK. Meanwhile, the UK government also announced the Friends of the COP. And from the local governments, we have the mayor of Los Angeles as the C40 chair, who is part of the Friends of COP process, as well as finance advisor Mark Carney is also part of the process. Every year, we are conducting a cyclic process. We are participating in our efforts through showcasing our data and analysis and summits. We participate in consultations and decision-making processes. And we are trying to align ourselves with the priorities of the presidencies. And this year, the UK government has announced a number of priorities. And since Madrid, we are also conducting our work towards a vision called making the Glasgow COP a multi-level action COP. It is endorsed by around 20 networks now as the working group of the LGMA constituency. Those organizations who are actively involved in the process. We're focusing on 6 main areas: raising ambition, NDC vertical integration, climate finance, localization, balanced approach, especially now with the post-COVID recovery process, linking to circular economy and nature, especially biodiversity process, and amplifying the global climate action. For example, engaging urbanization ministerial in the COP, or engaging with the arts and cultural heritage community, or working in a broader context of stakeholder engagement in the UNFCCC process, such as a new structure, but also processes like Action for Climate Empowerment. So this is a snapshot, and over the past couple of weeks since the last webinar, although it was regularly supposed to be a low profile because of the summer period in the Northern Hemisphere, it was particularly busy because, as you have seen with the postponement of the events, there are a lot of events being on the virtual arena, and this was also one of those periods where we had a number of virtual sessions. One of the most important ones was hosted by ICLEI, one of the core partners of the LGMA. This time we wanted to present our network's contribution to the Race to Zero campaign, which was announced by the champions on 5th of June. What we have gathered on the 29th of July is a dialogue with a priority focus to Europe, Japan, Korea, and Australia. These countries and continents were particularly very active historically, especially in mitigation. Obviously, the other parts of the world, like North America, is also important. But for this webinar, we wanted to particularly focus on these countries of the Eastern Hemisphere because of evolution of a number of processes and leadership, both at the local and subnational level, but also at the national level. And we want to have this discussion also with our partners in national governments, but also UNFCCC. So if you have looked at this agenda, we were able to gather a very strong, let's say, lineup of speakers, starting with Minister of Environment of Japan, who have mobilized a special video message, but as well as Deputy Executive Secretary of UN Climate Change Secretariat, high-level champion from the UK presidency, Nigel Topping, and the rest of the representative of local engineers included Ashok Sridharan, Mayor of Bonn, Suchi Abe, Governor of Nagano, Mina Arbe, Mayor of Turku, Yom Ta-yong, Mayor of Suwon, Anne Reynolds from Hobart, and on the last minute we also have Mayor of Saitama City also joining us because of their commitment for climate net zero targets the day before. The whole session was 2 hours, and it was held in 2 sessions. One, we have the political representatives, and the second hour, we had a discussion with the technical representatives, in particular, how the political ambition is supported by the administrations and the networks like ICLEI in terms of putting the visions into practice, especially accounting, planning, reporting, and networking among those cities. So that was the essence of the second part of the session. The whole session is available on YouTube, and through this links you can also have access to the speeches or text of each of those speakers. Obviously, we are now trying to wrap up a summary of all these discussions, but here I'd like to highlight a couple of key announcements that came up during this webinar. The first one was from the Minister of Environment of Japan. Obviously, Japan has been very active in the past couple of months. They have submitted their second NDC in February, but this was a bit criticized because there were no change in the NDC ambition. Whereas ICLEI, both at the ICLEI Japan office at the national level, but also at the global level, we were ambitious and we were hopeful that Ministry of Environment and Japanese government would come up with some more new ideas. This was particularly the case in the Petersburg Climate Dialogue. Japan announced that they would submit a third NDC. And over these past months, we have been working with our partners in Japan so that the Net Zero Japan initiative has now evolved significantly. So during the webinar, Minister of Japan made a very powerful statement. His speech was 4 minutes of statement, including a priority address of the Japanese approach to supporting or not supporting the fossil fuel or coal power plants. This was the first half, but the second part of his statement was on the zero carbon cities in Japan. And very powerful statement is that he was acknowledging and welcoming, he was very proudly presenting that the Japanese cities and prefectures driving to commitments for decarbonization will also be driving Japan as a nation for more ambitious targets. Obviously, this statement doesn't make any reference to the NDCs yet, but we are aware there is ongoing discussions. So this vision and leadership in terms of combining, offering resources, offering support, and recalling their efforts by the Japanese Minister of Environment towards Japanese cities and prefectures was really remarkable. So in the session, we also have demonstrated this because we have, in addition to the minister, we have the governor and we have the mayor of a city and then a governor of a prefecture. So that was an excellent presentation of multi-level and collaborative climate action. And during the webinars, both the governors and mayors have announced proudly that the number of Japanese cities and prefectures who have committed to net zero has exceeded 100. And this also means more than 50% of population of Japan is now under a commitment for zero carbon cities before 2050. Obviously, this will have huge impact to the future NDCs that will come from Japanese Minister of Environment. Similarly, Republic of Korea, Mayor of Suwon, as the leader of the coalition for net zero, have also announced that 1 month before, in June, there was more than 200 local governments in Korea who have announced a climate emergency declaration, or who have signed a climate emergency declaration. In 1 month's time, these among those 200, around 75 of them, both metropolitan governments, but also local governments across Korea, have now announced their coalition for a net zero. This is also strengthening that the climate emergency declaration, the best way to respond is to start up by considering climate neutrality targets. So a similar process evolving in Korea. ICLEI Korea and other partners are actively involved in this process, including the Global Covenant of Mayors. So we are very happy that that after the announcement of the Race to Zero on the 5th of June, some national efforts like this, Korea, Japan is also evolving. Later on, we heard from Hobart that Australia, which is the champion of local leadership by introducing the concept of climate emergency declarations, council declarations, has now also advanced on climate neutrality targets. Obviously, compared to Japan and Korea, Australia is a bit disadvantaged because there's not such national leadership. But the network among the cities and states in Australia is showing that the climate emergency is really driving, especially even in the process of COVID-19 pandemic, that climate movement is still active and strong, and especially at the local and subnational level, they are driving a significant momentum. We heard from Mayor of Turku how a traditionally ambitious city has now advancing its targets. For example, they were changing, they were making early estimations that they will reach to their phase out of coal in their energy structures, or in advancing with their circular development commitments, so that Turku is in fact one of the first cities who are complying with the minimum requirements of the Race to Zero campaign. So this was encouraging to see how the experience of Turku is now expanding throughout the Europe and rest of the world. Mayor of Bonn, as the Mayor of Bonn also, but also President of ICLEI, have also underlined how voluntary action over the past 20 years has the opportunity to accelerate or elevate through the power of climate emergency, through the dialogues with the Parents for Future or Fridays for Future movements, and the council decisions, which is then further on supported by the work of the administration and the climate council of the city, which is now recognizing Bonn as one of the cities who have been announcing climate neutrality before the national targets of 2035. So German national target is 2038, but Bonn is 2035. And all these presentations were also welcome, and commitments were welcomed by the UNFCCC Executive Secretary and high-level champions, which was also encouraging their work because they are now conveying these messages to the national governments. And over the past weeks and also in the next couple of months, we will see more and more interaction of the non-party stakeholders through the support of the high-level champions and with the UNF Secretary, so that we can influence more national indices, so that by the time we reach to Glasgow, we can have much more announcements, so that new and additional indices are coming up with the engagement of local and regional governments. Just yesterday, we have celebrated a very important event in Latin America or Americas. This was the second Local Environmental Authorities Forum hosted by CC35. CC35 is one of the newest networks. It is capturing a network of capital cities of Central and South America. It has also advancing to other cities in America, such as Los Angeles, but also as part of the way towards COP26, as part of the LGMA process, they're also reaching out to Glasgow. CC35 and the Local Environmental Authorities Forum has done similar experience in 2018 Quito. In fact, that was the kickoff for CC35. And this year, in yesterday's event, was also a series of presentations by both the mayors of Santiago, as well as representatives from Guatemala, Tegucigalpa, Recife, a diversity of cities and representatives from across Americas, both at the mayor's level, but also at the environmental secretaries. The event involved also contributions from the champions, both of the champions from Chile and UK, and there was also very nice interactions and engagements from the stakeholders, from business community, research institutes, and the event also concluded with a training session, a working group session, and the whole event was supported by a network like ICLEI, R20, WWF One Planet Challenge, UCLA, ICOMOS, IUCN, which is core leaders in the LGMA working group as well, and most of them. The event concluded with the Santiago Declaration. The Environment Secretary of Santiago and Environment Secretary of Guatemala has jointly announced the details of the Santiago Declaration. It is now in the process of endorsement and ratification of the members of CC35. So over the next couple of days, we will be announcing the full text. But you can imagine that the core elements of the LGMA roadmap towards COP26 is fully embraced in this declaration, and I'm happy to already alert you that the declaration has also additional commitments, additional information, such as more coordinated work to encourage more American, South American and Central American cities committing to climate neutrality, continuous capacity building, and work with the national government, but also among their peers. So you would see the CC35 Santiago Declaration is opening a new, let's say, window of opportunity, a new momentum, introducing a new momentum to the work of cities and regions and states in Americas. And this would, of course, just when we are getting closer to a very busy period in the next couple of months, is definitely very encouraging, really very is motivating and encouraging others to join. Therefore, we are very happy. We're proud of our partners in CC35 and others who have made this materialize this event. We're very happy to see the strong support from the COP25 presidency as well as the hosts of COP26. So I think this is exemplary again, that collaboration at all levels and innovative mechanisms is expanding across the world. You have seen the experience of ICLEI with the Eastern Hemisphere, the experience of CC35 in the American continent. So I think this is encouraging us that in the next couple of weeks and months, new examples could come up and support these efforts. And then we can consolidate all these through our LGMA roadmap towards COP26 in Glasgow. Over the past couple of weeks, there was a new report. If you can recall, almost in every webinar, we are announcing new reports. We had the UN Habitat Guide for Enhancing Human Settlement in NDCs in May. Then we had from GIZ a think piece on collaborative climate action. And now we are also announcing that the Coalition for Urban Transitions have also made a preliminary release of their newest report, Economic Case for Greening the Global Recovery Through Cities. This is capturing an important research, and actually a revised version, full-scale version will be released in September. The report already starts with a very interesting finding that, in fact, while we are hopeful that the green recovery would be the new normal in the post-COVID era, the practicality is that, in fact, the issue is not so easy. Unfortunately, only a very tiny piece of the green stimulus packages are, or let's say the stimulus packages are green, and very few of them are addressing to urban context. So there's still a lot of work to do. And this report recommends that for national governments, there could be 7 main themes or sectors that they could consider more active support to local and regional governments. This is green construction and retrofit, clean mobility, renewable energy, active transport, nature-based solutions, waste and resources, and R&D, research and development. And the assessment of this report is quantifying the impacts under 5 main criteria: the scale of investment, the potential of carbon reduction, but also the creation of jobs, the ease of implementation through legal and technical support mechanisms, and wider benefits like health. So the Coalition for Urban Transition will continue documents, and other reports are also on the way, so that the documentation of such evidence would be also giving us the chance that we can convince our national governments more easily in their efforts that while the global negotiations are halted, the more bulk of the work is at the national level, so that the more we make this kind of information accessible to our national partners, they can then introduce to the national process at home for the NDCs. So over the past couple of weeks, the partners across the world who are engaged in the UNFCCC process were also very busy to respond to the letter of the high-level champions. This was a letter from the champions as a result of the outcome of Madrid that Marrakech partnership is expanded towards 2025. They have invited for all partners in the UNFCCC process to share their views to their 5 main questions. These questions were aiming to explore the vision for a new phase of work of the Marrakech partnership, and the deadline was 31st of July. The result is pretty impressive. More than 40 networks or coalitions or partners have presented their ideas. The diversity is really impressive, and the number is also impressive. There are submissions from LGMA, official LGMA partners, ICLEI Region 4 and UITP, the Institute for Public Transport. We have other partners, mainly non-party stakeholders. A number of them are already in the LGMA community and LGMA family, as we can say it, like SLOCAT, the Network of Sustainable and Low Carbon Transition, WWF, which is having a special track on One Planet City Challenge, CDP, who is also working on cities reporting, Global Alliance for Building and Construction. There are other groups like Marrakech Partnership, thematic groups from transport and land use, and there are several networks or initiatives which are not necessarily connected directly to the LGMA, but we are having friendly relations. For example, trade unions, farmers, World Business Council, the Galvanizing Global Climate Action, the Climate Group, Climate Action Network. So these are more or less the networks or the organizations or communities or constituencies who have been really active in the climate process, especially in terms of ambitious climate action. But for us, even more encouraging and even more exciting to see is the increased number of submissions from parties, which demonstrates that developing countries, North and the South, and developed countries are collectively looking forward to more active engagement of non-party stakeholder engagement in the climate process. We have seen strong statements from EU, Switzerland. We have seen strong statements from Arab states, African group in particular, an opportunity for or new collaboration. Colombia, Ecuador, Chile, these countries have always been very ambitious in engaging local and regional governments or non-party stakeholders. But as we have seen, the evolution and increasing in the response of the other groups of countries are powerful, and we are confident that this will be shaping, or this will be helping the champions to shape a much more robust and ambitious agenda. In the next rounds and over the couple of weeks, we can go through the details of those submissions. Obviously, the UN Climate Change Secretariat will make a synthesis report, but from over the first overview, we are seeing, for example, proposals and many references that the Marrakech Partnership action pathways could be connected much more robustly to the NDCs. Some proposals like introducing regional and national ambassadors of climate action that could work with the high-level champions. This was a common position both in the submissions of ICLEI, but also in some of those parties. ICLEI and others are also advocating to much better use of the mayors and governors or local leaders and regional leaders as the agencies of the champions, and obviously expanding the mitigation concept to a broader climate debate on justice, on inclusive action is coming up, so that the scope of climate action is also expanding, and that we are seeing also in the Race to Zero as well as global climate action pathways, which will be the next agenda now. As we said, Pathways is a process that is presenting a vision towards 2050. Over the past weeks and months, there's all the pathway groups have worked on at least the vision of their working groups. Some of those groups have revised or re-strengthened some of the content, and the champions are also introducing a support team, which are numerous consultants, experts who are providing services as is in-kind contribution or pro bono, or in some cases as contract-based processes, so that the evidence base of mapping of initiatives, S-curves, or key performance indicators could be developed that would support the trajectory towards 2050 with more interim targets. This type of work is, of course, very valuable, because that is much more giving the confidence that the work of the result of the pathways of thematic groups would be much more supported by actual or more refreshed data and evidence base, which would be much more convincing for national governments to take these efforts into their NDCs. In the case of thematic group on human settlements, we have been advocating that the group should be rephrasing its work in mainly two main areas, subgroups: built environment, which is particularly focusing on the buildings, but also the investments on infrastructure, the key facilities of infrastructure. The second group is on waste and consumption, which is traditional solid waste, but also a circular economy, procurement, as well as some consumption and habits or sustainable consumption practices, such as reduction of food, reduction of transported goods, more encouraging use of local produced goods. So this will be the discussions to be held in the second group. And in the next couple of weeks, we will start to shape with the co-leaders as UNEP and ICLEI, but also with the engagement of all the members of the thematic pathways, to define more details of the impact areas and come up with clear action agendas. And obviously, especially the waste and consumption group is relatively a new one. Obviously, we will have more actors, more partners joining these efforts that have not been familiar with the pathways before. Therefore, this next couple of weeks until end of August, we will be working in terms of developing putting flesh on the bones of our skeleton, let's say, which is the rough version of the pathways. And in September, the champions will be providing inputs to our work. And over the next weeks, we will also have support from the scientific peer reviews. And the goal is that these documents are finalized in October, and starting with the Race to Zero November dialogues, these documents are available for publicly. So this was a tight deadlines. This is an intense work, but all the members of the LGMA are much more encouraged to join us in this work. Throughout this year, we will also be having more opportunities to interact with other thematic groups because of the vision of the Marrakech partnership. For the moment, the thematic pathways of human settlement is co-led by ICLEI and UNEP, but others are more than welcome to join us. In the next couple of weeks, we will also be seeing a number of exciting initiatives. The first one will be a very promising initiative from Japan. Minister of Environment have been advocating and have been announcing that they would like to introduce new elements. One of the first of those is an online platform for a dialogue and collaboration between efforts on climate and COVID-19. So this is a very interesting experience. It is demonstrating the ownership of national governments into the process. This will be announced through a ministerial event on the 3rd of September. But this event will not be just ministerial. It will also be open for stakeholders, non-party stakeholders. In that regard, Minister of Environment has invited all the constituencies to communicate their video statements or texts by 27th of August. The document was already circulated to the LGMA community, and this is giving us the chance that we could be more visible in our works, and that the discussion we had in different platforms, be it the constituency, be it initiatives, could come up into the same platform that is led by national governments. As you can see, this is considering the long-term work of the German government through Petersberg Climate Dialogue. This platform by the Japanese government is also introducing new concepts, especially in the era of COVID, where most of the efforts are going on virtual, this is an additional opportunity. So as ICLEI, we encourage all the LGMA community to draft their statements. It does not have to be constitutionally coordinated. Any network who are involved in this process, who have contributions to the online platform for sustainable recovery, are free to send their texts or videos. The Minister of Environment is the final authority to acknowledge this. We assume they would be willing to open space as much as possible. So we encourage all our partners to take this seriously. Over the next couple of weeks, we will be seeing intense events in September. We will continue to have a special event on the 21st of September, which will be the mayor's session of the European Sustainable Cities and Towns Congress, which is hosted by Mannheim, but obviously it will be virtual. The real conference will be on the 30th of September to 2nd of October, but the mayor's session, which will be producing the Mannheim message, will be on the 21st of September. And the outcome of this document will be presented to European Commission during the conference on the 1st of October. ICLEI European Secretariat and Mannheim and City of Aalborg and others, especially including Committee of the Regions and European Economic, Social and Council are coordinating this effort. So we encourage you to again connect to those colleagues in the European space so that you can contribute to sessions as well. In September, UN 75 will be having its culmination of its campaign through an event on the 21st of September. The whole event in UN General Assembly this year will be virtual. This means that all the interventions will be communicated online. There will be no physical discussions. In addition to the high-level agenda on 75th anniversary of UN, due to an outcome of the biodiversity negotiations, there's a mandated event that UN President of the UN General Assembly will host a debate, a leaders summit on biodiversity on the 30th of September. This will be coordinated by the President of the General Assembly, but the Convention on Biological Diversity and UN Environment Programs, of course, providing huge support, as well as General Secretary General. We are hearing the scope, the session descriptions are already made available. ICLEI have been advocating and leading the work of the advocacy of local and subnational governments and the climate space, as well as the biodiversity space. So we are hoping that we will have representatives being invited to this session so that we can convey our messages at the highest level. Then we can all feed into the preparations for the biodiversity summit, biodiversity conference in Kunming in May. Meanwhile, we are also aware the leadership from Scotland for Edinburgh process is shaping up. Hopefully, this will also be an input to the summit, as well as Mayor of Montreal as the global ambassador of local and regional governments in voicing the priorities and proposals to the UN level as well. So watch this space, more updates are coming, but it is an opportunity that this could be an opportunity where with the climate agenda is also very well connected to the nature and biodiversity and land degradation agenda as well, which is a topic we have been asking for so many years. In October, we will be having an important agenda, Daring Cities, the initiative of ICLEI and City of Bonn, supported by German Minister of Environment and German Minister of Development Cooperation, as well as the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. This is the 3 weeks of event. Through the submissions, we are now shaping the agenda. This will be a series of events, and every week on the Wednesday, we will have a special plenary sessions. On the 14th of October, we will have a special session on climate neutrality. On the 20th of October, this will be more or less the LGMA sessions, but this will be an opportunity for us also to hear from the pathways of others as well. And we would like to use this as a special dialogue of the networks of local engineers from Americas to have a discussion on climate action pathways because of the presence of the COP25. We are also happy to announce that those organizations or networks who would wish to have a side event are able to send their applications to ICLEI, coordinating the organization of the agenda, so that in addition to the official programs of the Daring Cities Conference, we could also organize, or you could also host side events. After this webinar, we will circulate the application forms, and the deadline is 28th of August, so that this could also be an additional opportunity for LGMA community to present their updates or initiatives to the global space. In November, we will have another initiative from Africa. The Local Climate Solutions for Africa is a regular event that ICLEI is collaborating with the number of African partners. This would also be the time where the African continent will stand up and rise up on climate action. This is particularly important because after the conclusion of the UK presidency, the next COP will be hosted by African group. Therefore, having a collaborative discussion with African with African cities and regions during this year is particularly very advantageous. So LOCS for Africa is the next agenda for cities and regions over the past or next couple of months, in particular in November. More updates to come soon. In November, between 9th and the 19th of November, the high-level champions under the Race to Zero campaign have also announced a Race to Zero November dialogues. They have received more than 100 applications. Around 20 of them were also from the networks of the cities and regions and states. We're happy to hear that the tentative agenda foresees a dedicated day for cities and regions and built environment on the 18th of November. This will contain minimum 3 sessions, but throughout those 10 days, the champions are also very eager to have representatives of cities and regions in other thematic events. So this will be a process over the next couple of weeks. The champion support team will be working with the applications of the networks. We are very happy that numerous members of LGMA constituency, such as C40, UCLG, GCOM, ICLEI, Regions 4, COSLA, they all have submitted their work, and I think there will be an impressive list of engagement, and this will be an opportunity for us to follow up from our activities in summertime and we visualize and concretely demonstrate our engagement in the global process towards Glasgow. With this, I'd like to give a break to my presentation, which was this time a bit longer than expected. I thank you all for your interest, and I'm very happy to open the floor for contributions for the next 15 minutes. You can feel free to type into the question box, or you can raise your hands, and we are able to open the microphones for you so that you can interact directly or read your statements on your own, or we can also read from the chat box as well. I see the first question or contribution from Rodrigo Messias. Rodrigo from the United Cities and Local Governments and the long time expert on the advocacy of local and regional governments. His statement is as follows. And Rodrigo, if you want, you can also just contribute verbally as well. Let me read the statement. In general, it feels that the Race to Zero is still most an agenda adopted by the global north and developed countries. How to ensure it's truly a global movement? Any examples or champion cities in developing countries that committed to Race to Zero? Obviously, this is a topic that everybody is trying to make sure that the visibility and the engagement is global and inclusive. Rodrigo, of course, we don't have the speakers here from the champions, and as UCLG, of course, we are sharing these inputs. But what I could say, for example, if you look at the opening of the 5th of June, if you go back to this record, it was the mayor of Entebbe from Africa who was representing the priorities of cities and regions. Obviously, Entebbe did not commit to Race to Zero, but Entebbe highlighted, the mayor particularly highlighted how climate action could address their urban development challenges and help their key priorities like sustainable transport, public transport, safe housing, waste management, air quality issues. And as I just mentioned during my presentation, you would hear from Santiago Declaration, there's a huge mobilization from Americas. Or if you see the announcements coming up from Africa, but also from Asia, that we are seeing more and more cities and regions who are embarking in this journey. So I believe compared to a couple of years ago, the picture is much brighter. Obviously, it's our responsibility as the networks to give the space and create the opportunities, create the right bridges that these efforts are visibly seen. And even the parties, if you look at the ministerial dialogue we had on the 28th of May, we are seeing the submission from Rwanda, and this was also the debate with GIZ paper last month. Rwanda and NDC is particularly strong in engaging Rwandan local governments. We are seeing a more and more hints that countries like Ivory Coast, the NDCP partnership like Uganda, Mozambique, Dominican Republic, Peru are opening the space for local energy governments and engagement. So I believe as long as we can capture them very well, there will be more and more concrete evidence that the agenda of Race to Zero is not an agenda of the global north, but is a collective ambitions of across the world. Those who want to run faster on climate agenda is spread throughout the continents of the world and the cities of the world. But obviously we have to and engage more opportunities to visualize and to showcase their work. I see support from Rodrigo on the chat box saying that that's great. We have Sayoko Matsumoto. He's our colleague from ICLEI Japan, who have been instrumental in the work of Minister of Environment and as well as ICLEI Japan for the net zero cities. That's a very announcement coming from Sayoko. He says that ICLEI Japan is planning to have a session at Daring Cities on zero carbon cities and hope to invite ASEAN cities to see how we can facilitate this also in ASEAN countries. Congratulations, Sayoko. That is very, very encouraging. As we mentioned in the agenda on the 14th of October, we are hoping to have a Minister of Environment of Japan to communicate with us. This will be a nice follow-up from 29th of July, the 3rd of September, Japan Online Platform, the Daring Cities. If we have more ASEAN cities, that is really powerful to show that ASEA, which is one of the fastest growing in terms of population and also urban community, is also embarking on that. I think the Korean and Japanese examples are really encouraging. We are hoping that these kind of models could be inspirational for others as well. So that's very good news, Sayoko. Congratulations. So we still have a couple of more minutes. I see a number of colleagues, both from parties and partners in the participants list. Feel free to provide any updates that you wish to share with us. I see now a contribution from Eva from CMR, the Council of European Cities and Metropolitan Regions. What process, the question from Eva is, Eva Banyos is, what process is to follow to join forces on session 1 on 18th of November on the Race to Zero dialogues? Thanks. That now is conducted by the engagement team of the champions, led by our colleagues Agat and Priya on behalf of the champions. They have invited partners who have originally submitted their proposals to merge their applications. I think this session on session 1 would be led by the Science Based Targets Initiative, and others are also involved, like COSLA is part of this network. I know COSLA is a member of CMR, so I think if you also work with COSLA, there will be a good opportunity for you to connect the work of CMR as well. But of course, the others are also open for application. I think it's a question also of time in terms of capacity. So I hope this was helpful, but I will be sharing more updates on that in the next couple of days and weeks. But these are the first reactions I can share with you. Okay, Eva is typing again on the question box. COSLA is invited. Yeah, COSLA is involved. Just to know if we have to go through ICLEI LGMA for this one or through the engagement team. This process is led by the champions engagement team. Therefore, we encourage you to approach. But for each session, they are assigning, let's say, facilitators. As I said, for the session 1, this is Science-Based Targets Initiative. For the session 2, it is climate group under two coalition. For the third one, it is GCOM, as far as I know, and they will be coordinating. So these partners could expand the more information, and they could come up with additional information to all of us. You're welcome, Eva. Thanks for raising this issue and giving the opportunity for further clarification. For the next agenda items, I am now checking our presentation agenda. Anything you would like to underline, if there's anything missing, feel free to add under this agenda item, either on the past events or in the next future agendas. In the afternoon, we will have the second version of this webinar. And there we're also expecting colleagues from especially CEST 35. They can also provide more updates from their experience. I see a contribution from Serafin from COSLA. Serafin has raised his hand, so I'm just opening his unmute. Serafin, you can unmute yourself and interact.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, sorry, it was just some funny thing with my software that I was trying to drop a message, but it didn't work. Yes, I mean, thank you, Yunus. Very useful as always. On regard to Race to Zero, we, as you said, we've been told yesterday that they have merged, the champions team have merged the sessions, and as you say, there's a number of organizations. Well, that's been basically merged into three sessions. Some of them are obviously the members of the LGMA constituency. We are unclear at the moment what it actually means in practice. What understanding so far is there will be possibility of one contribution per guest. We are obviously also in reaction to Eva, which I was meant to have a word just before the meeting today. Well, we see what can be done. From the fact that it's going to be now one session, well, 3 sessions of 1 hour each, and there will be 6 or so speakers each, so it's not like a great spread. I think what will be useful for the wider audience is that, considering there is a number of organizations that or guests that are being invited to provide speakers or contributions from this LGMA group, it will be useful to have perhaps a discussion among ourselves in the coming days as to try to make sure that we can do the best, we can do the best contribution as possible, because no doubt, for instance, the contribution of ECLG or others that in other sessions will be useful to coordinate. So perhaps just an offer to those who are being contacted by the champions to try to have a separate brief session in the coming days to make sure that our LGMA contribution to this Race to Zero discussions is as complementary and as coordinated and as helpful as possible for our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Serafin. Yes, we fully agree. Obviously, this is the first time such an experience is being practiced, so everybody's learning. So I would suggest we all are showing our all good faith, so that to show that such a practice is helpful. And as you said, everybody has to, let's say, be realistic about their original expectation or vision, because now they are asked to merge. So this is a typical case in such global processes. But I'm sure the organizations who have been assigned as the session leads would address all these challenges, but also make the best use of our dialogue. We are from ICLEI side very happy to support as much as possible, but I think let's give the chance for the session leads to come up with their ideas, and then we can come up with. I think the good news is that this is an iterative process. So then once when we come up with our ideas, it will be communicated to the champions, and they provide another response back. So in the next couple of weeks, obviously things would evolve, and I'm confident that there will be a good demonstration. We have a comment under the question box from our colleague Talia Fogerbauer from the Austrian delegation, who is a friend of the LGMA for a long time, and the ambassador of the Action for Climate Empowerment, the global ambassador. I'm reading Talia's statement on the question box for all of us. Thanks for the comprehensive overview, perfectly provided as usual. Regarding the initiative of Race to Zero, I think it is important that we have a more neutral platform for global engagement so that nobody feels left behind. We should be in close coordination and cooperation, especially with engaged friends of the Southern Hemisphere. The work of the champions is very valuable. However, we should focus more on the international multilateral level so that all can feel to be integrated in our efforts to tackle climate change. Thanks again, Yunus, for your perfect work. Kindest regards, Talia. Thanks a lot, Talia. This is absolutely the type of feedbacks I think that everyone is looking for. Obviously, in this webinar, we focused only to the updates of the past couple of weeks. But for example, there is another event. For example, ACE has started regional dialogues, and I couldn't insert this, but for example, the first regional session was held for Central and Eastern Europe, and we had the deputy of Tirana, for example, joining this. And we know the calendar is advancing, that these are additional opportunities for us to engage. Again, the UNFCCC Executive Secretary has developed an open dialogue that is also having workshops, and I think that is also coming with some ideas. There are other parallel processes. So the UN space, especially UNFCCC platforms, are really increasing in number for us to be interacting and engaging with the parties. So obviously, Marrakech Pact is not the only, but I'm very happy that you are following, you're providing insights, and we definitely look forward to your leadership and colleagues and friends, delegations, parties, so that we can all bring these different parts of the puzzle into a one big piece, so that the result is more than 1 + 1, so that we can have an impressive synthesis that is really increasing our synergies and effectiveness. So we're more than happy to continue this discussion with you, especially on the way towards COP, but also pre-COP, where we are now aware ACE will also be very active, and other opportunities will arise in the next couple of months ahead. We have a contribution from Omal Jimmy. Omal, I'm not sure whether I've seen Omal before, and Omal has his Gmail address, so I cannot guess who is he representing. But I am reading his statement, and Omal, feel free if you want to intervene verbally as well. Jimmy Omal from Uganda. I think Jimmy Omal, we met very likely during the 29th of July ICLEI Race to Zero dialogue. I remember your inputs in that webinar. So thanks a lot for continuing your engagement. And I'm reading your statement, Jimmy. Race to Zero climate action are for nations who are moving faster on climate action with higher level of competency. What strategy does LGMA and ICLEI has for nations which are slow on climate action, but really feel they are being held back financially? That's a very good question, and I think it is a very good contribution, because the previous partners were always addressing the need to have the South, Global South, in the process. As you may have heard, the event yesterday of the Santiago and Chileans and Americas was important. Since you are from Uganda, I can also definitely say that, for example, in Uganda, we are working with NDCP partnership and Ugandan government to work on a revised NDC of Uganda. ICLEI Africa is coordinating this work, And as you may have heard, there will be an important agenda in Africa, in LOX, Africa, in the beginning of November. So I encourage you to connect with our colleagues from Africa Secretariat. I have already forwarded your previous message to them, and I will follow up with them that they provide back to you. The mayor of Entebbe was the speaker at the 5th of June, and he also addressed the challenges of the Global South having more ambitious commitments, obviously the need to facilitate more direct access or more resources flowing to the African or developing country cities. Obviously, it's a huge barrier, but we are hoping that the more with the recovery process, the more increased investments to renewable energy, the more money divested from fossil fuels should now go to the sustainable urban development across the world, including Africa. So let's stay in touch. We encourage you to join us in our efforts so that maybe in the next webinars we can provide your inputs and results from these interactions. And thanks for your continued interest to our work, Jimmy. I think the contributions so far for this round, and we try to address all of them as much as possible. We are at the end of our session, just 2 minutes past. So I thank you all. As we said, you will be receiving this webinar presentation and recording in the next day. And we encourage you to provide your feedback so that we can integrate into our work. And we thank you all for your participation. It was really a nice interaction. In September, we will have another round. And in October, we will be meeting on the 20th of October, but more details will be coming soon. So thank you very much, and have a nice day, have a nice evening, and have a nice night wherever you are living through. And look forward to staying in touch.